Mike Probosi in the Money Players Podcast, Keeneland edition for Saturday's races, Saturday, April 19th. And I'm bringing in a guy that's everywhere right now, Jackson Muniz. Jackson, I just saw on Twitter that you have a show now on Saturdays for the America's Best Racing people. So talk about that a little bit, and welcome back.
Thanks for having me, man. Always happy to be here with you. And yeah, we're going to be dealing with ABR for the next, I think, couple months. We're going to be doing all their Saturday shows. So we're going to be covering the Naira circuit, a little bit of Keeneland, I believe, too, and just whatever else pops up. And we're going to just go through the races and kind of just play it by ear. We're going to wing it a little bit and see what happens on each Saturday. It'll be a lot of fun.
I always appreciate your opinions, and it's cool that you're getting out there and getting your own show, and something that will be must see for those Saturdays. And we'll definitely be checking that out. For us, though, we still have work to do, and we're going to do some Keeneland Saturday. Getting close to the end of Keeneland, Jackson. A few more cards left. 11 race card on Saturday. We're going to look late pick 5. We got 3 turf races, 2 dirt races. What was your assessment of this card on Saturday? A little bit of a different type of card than we've had the past couple weeks.
Yeah, not so many, big giant stakes horses in this sequence, but I still thought it was pretty competitive. I thought all 5 races, there's a number of directions you could go, and that's not surprising. As Keeland, you get the best horses all the time, so I thought it was pretty tough. It's gonna be a lot of fun though, and we're gonna hopefully pick a couple winners in this sequence.
Let's jump into the late pick 5 for Saturday. It starts in race 7, 4:12 Eastern time. And we have 50-cent pick 5s at Keeneland, and they do offer a consolation. I don't know if some people like that. Some people don't. But starting the grass, it is a condition allowance race going 5.5. Money allowance type race here, Jackson. I thought this was wide open. I thought that there were some price possibilities. What say you to get it started?
I'm gonna try to get by with 3 in this spot. I think Pipsy's the one I'm gonna use on top. She just seems kind of obvious in here. We know she runs well fresh. We know she likes this track. We know she's good at 6 furlongs. First time lay 6, getting the best turf sprint jockey in the country, in my opinion, in Rosario. So, just a lot of things to like about this horse. She's definitely the class of the field. That Franklin race is just so much better than anything she's gonna face in here. And I thought she ran fine in that spot. She broke really sharply. Just didn't get a great trip after that. It was kind of between horses, took back, made another early move on the turn, and just kind of flattened out. But again, that came against way better. She's kind of the class of the field, as I mentioned. So I think she's going to be the one to beat. I'll use her. I'll use the 8 Julia's Dream as kind of my price play. It's not a whole lot of speed in here. I think she might be the one that could get a little loose in this spot. I know they'll be aggressive with her, and her 2 true turf sprint races produced 2 wins, and then ever since then they've been doing few different things with her. I don't really count the race down the hill. It's a little bit different, but the 2 true flat sprint races, she won both of those as a 2-year-old and got numbers that are actually still pretty competitive to this day. So if she's improved at all from 2 to 4, which is probably pretty likely, she'll be tough. And then on the outside, Bling, another one that just has faced much, much better than this lately. And I think getting back to allowance foes will be pretty good for her. Now, her last couple races haven't been great, but she does get a little freshening, and we know she likes this Keeneland turf course. So I'm going to use those 3, try to get by with 7, 8, and 11 in the spot.
Yeah, having horses that have an affinity for the course is a huge angle for me on the Keeneland surface. It seems like there are some horses that definitely move up over it. I agree with you on the 7, Pipsy. Just too much to like here. 9-2 morning line, Rosario, lay 6 speed class, has the numbers, and it's probably supposed to get the jump. We know a good future is now one on Sunday at Keeneland is raced okay versus that one back in the fall. And there's just, I do think off the bench, this one should get the jump on these. It's just a matter of can she finish it off here. I thought there were others you could look at, though. The ones you didn't mention, the 3 Cloudwalker, 6-1 morning line. It's Brendan Walsh, Jose Ortiz. This horse has some back sprint lines that fit very well. 2 wins over this Keeneland course and a 3rd in 3 starts. So definitely an affinity here. Now this one's going to come from the back, and that's difficult to win over this course sometimes, depending on what sort of a setup that this one gets. I do think we'll be finishing off late, and I'm definitely got to use this one on tickets here. And then the one is interesting to me, BG Warrior, 15-1 morning line. Now, this horse is 0-3 over the Keeneland grass, but it's been entered in several different spots recently. And I'm curious if they do actually end up in this race. Now, you draw the rail. The turf races aren't great, but this horse has plenty of speed. I think you're going to get a price. This horse was entered ambitiously in some of those other spots. I do think that maybe that this one could be a little sneaky in here. Has some grade 3 type back lines. That race back in April of last year was okay here versus Roses for Deborah. That was a really tough race. So this race is no tougher than that. Just as an interesting sort of long shot type for me in the opener at the opening leg of this pick 5 for Saturday at Keeneland. Let's jump to race number 8 here now. Mountain 8th on the dirt, and it's a 2X allowance, Jackson. I was looking at this race, and I was single to the 5, just a touch. Hard to really look past this one. 6-5 morning line, comes off the blowout win in the 1X at Fairgrounds. Ran second in the Bluegrass last year to Sierra Leone. I mean, that's a pretty good piece of form. Tried the Derby, finished last. Then, a couple races, just that one race to finish in that 3-year-old year. The Iowa Derby, finished second in there. Source has plenty of speed. You get Lasix again, which I do think is imperative for this horse. It just looks faster, looks better than most of these. I'm sure a lot of people will come for Skinner in this race, but I've never been a huge Skinner fan. I'm curious what you think here.
Yeah, I agree on Skinner. It feels like it's just a touch's race to lose. I mean, he arguably ran a better race than Sierra Leone did in the Bluegrass last year. He was up on the sizzling pace the entire race and stayed on really nicely. So, I mean, there's definitely no Sierra Leones in this spot. He just looks faster. There's not a lot of speed in here. I think he's probably going to win this race. He's going to be very short price. And I'm probably just going to use him and no one else, just Lone A in this race. I am a little curious what you think, because I thought it was interesting that he's actually entered in here when a race we're going to talk about in a couple minutes is the Ben Ali is double the purse, and the field really isn't. I didn't think it was that much better. So I found it a little curious that he's entered in this allowance race rather than just going to the stake race where he'd also be a big favorite. So maybe they're just trying to go through his conditions and before they jump into stakes company, or maybe they just don't. I don't know. I found that a little curious to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely would look very good in that Ben Ali. But now certainly they're going a Mountain 3/16 there, Mountain 8th here, so not that much of a difference at all. Would be controlling in that race. Maybe it's just the Lasix factor. I mean, got Lasix last time and aired. Certainly improved, but was that a 3 to 4 improvement? Was that a Lasix improvement? I'd be curious to know. I mean, I think it's worth asking the question. I'm not sure as far as eligibility and things like that for those kind of stakes races. If this horse wasn't made eligible to that race, perhaps it's an interesting dynamic and an interesting question to ask. Who would you take though if this horse wasn't in this race? I mean, would you go for Skinner? If the 5 would scratch out of here, I would try to take a shot against Skinner in here and look elsewhere.
Agreed. The problem is I don't know where you go at it. It would probably be a speed horse because, as I mentioned, there's just really not a whole lot of it. Maybe it's a price horse like the 4 Native Land who's done okay work over the dirt and has the right to improve second off the bench, blinkers on, and has some dirt numbers to go back to in his early 3-year-old season, including one right here at Keeneland. So maybe that'd be the one I'd lean on a little bit. But again, it's a good question to ask about the 5, but I don't think it's enough for me to jump off the bandwagon in this spot.
Grade 2 Elkorn Stakes is race number 9 at Keeneland. Mile and a half here. And they have these marathon races every year. This race came up, I thought, ultra tough. Jackson, what say you?
Yeah, tough race in this spot. It's good competitive field. Got 12 horses. I love these mile and a half races. They're always a lot of fun. I'm gonna go to the inside too in this spot. I like Rebel Red, who was only he finished a nose behind Limited Liability. Limited Liability is 8 to 5 in this spot, and Rebel Red is 8 to 1. That's a huge price difference for a horse that was a nose behind, a bob of the nose behind, and you're going to give me way better price. So I'll take him. Ran just okay at Fairgrounds. I think that was probably just a prep for this, getting him back to a marathon. And it is a little interesting that Jose Ortiz opts to ride here rather than Cherie's other horse who's missed the cut, who on paper is probably supposed to be a shorter price. So I'd take that as a good sign for Rebel Red. And then Grand Sonata, just super consistent marathon specialist, getting back to Keeneland where he's run okay in the past, especially in Kentucky. He's run particularly well historically. So I'll probably use those 2 on top from off the pace. And then I'll probably use a deep backup on the 6 Limited Liability just because I think he is the horse to beat. And he ran really well last time at Gulfstream, but that price is probably going to be enough to try to make me get those inside horses home.
Yeah, the ride he got last time, limited liability, was certainly an interesting one. If you go back and watch, really had no business pushing that early pace. If you look, a 162 early pace figure in that spot, and just was gutted the whole way around the racetrack and ended up getting picked off very late. Raced, I thought, very well in there. So much so that this horse hasn't been seen since, and will be a short price in this race. And I do think he could prove difficult to beat. I don't mind Miss the Cut in here. I do think that he has possibilities. On March 1st there and that race at Gulfstream, that was a racetrack that was favoring speed, and this horse was nowhere early. Now, was favored in there and ended up closing to be beaten less than 3 lengths for 6th. Grand Sonata was in that race. It did come from a little bit off of it. So, but this horse was checked early, had trouble. If you look back, raced pretty well last year against Silver Knot here in this race. So that piece of form definitely plays very well. Had a couple wins prior to that. So I look back to that line, and it's difficult not to use this horse coming off that line. Now, I realize that the main stable jockey ends up on the 1 here. But you never know who is being entered. Maybe both of these don't run here. So that's another thing that, and Jose Ortiz has been riding the 1. So I don't really put too much stock in that. I do have to look at that line from last year and think that this horse certainly plays well here and was against the racetrack last time. So definitely a must use for me. And I would use the 1 also if he ends up in the race. I think he has a ton of merits. Cherie has her barn going extremely well. This horse has a win over the racetrack. There's just a lot of things to like. So I'd have both Cherie horses. It'd be hard to leave limited liability off most tickets just because of the race that he did race last time, has 2 wins over the track. He's going to be tough, but he's not, a slam dunk in here. Pretty tough race. Lots of nice horses in this grade 2 Elkorn on Saturday. Let's jump to the Ben Ali here. Race number 10, grade 3. And Jackson mentioned this is a pretty wide open race here. No clear favorite. Jackson, where'd you go?
Yeah, no clear favorite. And I'm going to try to use some prices in here just because I didn't really see a huge difference between the morning line favorite, which is, Duke of Love, and then to the 2 Prince of Power. I mean, there's really not on the speed figures. There's really not much separating those two. So I'm going to use some prices. Top pick would probably be the 5 Paroli for Mike McCarthy. Had a huge win over this track in the fall meet. Was really impressive that day. And then came back and ran an okay race at Churchill, ran a good race at Turfway. And then I don't know what happened last time. He just didn't run a single step that day. Something happened. A little brief freshening since then, but I was able to watch workout last week. He looked really good in the morning and working in company, made up a lot of ground on the workmate, did it pretty easily. So I think he's probably back to his best self. I would have to imagine, especially since they're showing up in this spot. We know the distance is an issue. He's tactical enough to get forward in this race, and his best effort is plenty good enough to win this race. So at 6-1, I'm going to use him on top. I mentioned the 2 Prince of Power. He's the clear speed of this race, and he's another one that has figures that put him right there. I mean, the Lasix issue the Lasix, non-Lasix really isn't an issue. He ran well 2 back at Turfway without it when he ran 3rd, setting the pace. He's another one that we know can get the distance, and he's going to be a mass surprise in here. I'm going to probably try to get by with just those 2, maybe as a backup. Number 1, San Siro, who's another one that just is a bit of a price in the spot and has numbers that make plenty of sense in here. So I'm going to try to beat these favorites in this race, just because again, I don't really think there's a whole lot separating this field from top to bottom.
Yeah, all these horses, if you look at them, there's so many holes that you can poke, and all of them, you mentioned the 1. Well, he has got to come off Lasix for this race, so there's that issue. You mentioned the 2 Prince of Power. Well, he just raced on April 8th here in the Commonwealth, and now he was 88-1 in that spot. Now stretches out to a mile and 3/16 here, and certainly is going to get the front. I mean, I would think that he's got to be on the front here, stretching out and controlling it. There's horses you didn't even talk about. The 6 Duke of Love's 5-2 in the morning line came off a double bar layoff there. He was off a year and a half. Showed up in that condition allowance race at Gulfstream against horses like Speakeasy, Caramel Chip. I mean, those are nice horses there. And he was bad. I mean, he was 10-1 in that spot and raced about how you would think he would race coming off that sort of layoff. I would imagine that was very preppy. This is a My Race horse, though, who's going to take a fair amount of money in here. Those horses always take way more money than they should because of the My Race horse influence. You didn't mention him, so I'm curious to get your take on this horse. You obviously didn't use him in your numbers. What's your thoughts on this one?
On the 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, the double bar layoff scared me off a little bit. And then I don't know, watching that last replay, I just thought it was okay. I mean, he dropped way out of it, kind of came with a run, and he never really passed anyone. He just galloped out okay. Again, I just don't think there's a whole lot. It's more of the price in this. I do think he's going to take a ton of money. It's Johnny V. It's my racehorse, like you said. They're going to go crazy for him. He's got the back numbers to run back to, and I just don't trust that he's the same horse that he was back in September of 23. So what is going to be a short price. I think he's worth trying to beat in this spot.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really like him much. You didn't mention the 7 either, Uno Moss Bourbon. That would probably be my top pick in here. If you look at this horse's form and the company he's been keeping, and he won the Super Derby last year. Then he tried the Fayette here. Well, he faced Hit Show. Well, I know that Hit Show, isn't a grade 1 type horse over here. Well, he just showed up and won the Dubai World Cup, this spring. So, and then, jumped into the Clark, faced Rattle and Roll, Most Wanted. Both of those horses would certainly be favored in this spot. And he ended up, being put up to third in there when Hit Show went sideways in the stretch. So again, I think that's a pretty decent piece of form when you look at the rest of these. Then, he sort of got a preppy type start that he had trouble in February. And faced a horse like Knightsbridge in there, who I think would take a fair amount of money in this race. Also, so I just feel like on class that this horse has been keeping a lot better company than most of these. He has more recency than some of these. I do think that he plays well in here. Now you get Brian Hernandez. It's just a matter of, can he get the distance? Well, I think he can. I mean, he won a mile and 8th in the Super Derby. That race here last year going a mile and 8th, he raced well enough. So I do think that he fits very well in a wide open race that there's just so many different ways you can go, so many holes you can poke in all of them. I could see the 2 also. I don't mind that horse just because I think he's going to be on the front and he has sort of a pace edge. So I want the horse that's going to be on the front in here, and it's 15-1 morning line. He's going to play very well, and this jockey's definitely going to blast. He gets a jockey switch. This guy's a front-end rider. He's a send-type rider. This horse is going to be in front. It's probably going to need to be caught. Now, is he bred for the distance? Not really, but he has a mile and a quarter win on the resume. So, I mean, as good as anything in here, and you get that big morning line, he's a use for me in multis, I think.
Yeah, and just to add to the 2, I didn't say before, he was 2 lengths behind Hall of Fame last December or last fall. I mean, what would Hall of Fame be in this race? He'd be big favorite. So I would definitely use the 2 of my tickets.
So what numbers for you? I just want to check, make sure the numbers you'd be using. Just the 2 and the 5?
Maybe 2, 5, and the 1 as a deep backup, I think.
Okay. So let's jump to the last then. Back to the grass. Amount of 16th, Jackson. How are we going to get paid here?
Yeah, this is the tough race. Tough way to end the day. I'd be spreading as deep as you can in here. I think I'd probably use the 5 on top just because of the price he's going to be. I know this is a horse we've talked about before, Thomas Aquinas. He's going to be 15-1. I didn't mind that last race at Gulfstream. He was kind of pressing the pace the whole time. It's just not a winning trip on the turf, and it's definitely not a winning trip going a mile and a half. You look at the race flow of the chart. Every horse in Superfecta came from the back half of the field. That was a race that kind of came apart towards the end. So I didn't mind that race. He has some races back at Keeneland that are okay. I mean, he actually has 2. He's 2 for 3 in the exact at Keeland, so there's nothing wrong with that. And just looking at everyone else in this race, looking at some of the shorter prices, I just don't think they're all that. They don't have to win this race. They're not that trustworthy. They're not standouts by any means. So I'll probably try to use him on top. I'm also going to use the 9 Ascari for Christopher Davis, another one coming out of a mile and a half race. But he ran another one that ran pretty well in that spot. It was kind of a wide trip, pressing, close enough to a hottish pace, and just kind of stayed on there. I think getting back to 2 turns is going to be beneficial for him. He's run well this distance before in the past. He has some good numbers to run back to. And then the 12, Ciro DiMarzio for Wesley Ward. Tough post, but I think he's going to be one that is going to be on the lead. The race at Del Mar was in the fall was pretty good. That was another one, hot pace, made an early move into it. He did get a good trip that day, but I thought he ran well in there. And I think he might be, just based on figures, he might be the one to beat. I'd be trying to, wrong race. I think I'd use those 3, maybe a little bit of the 8. I just don't love him at a short price. I'm curious to see where you would go in here, because I thought this was a really tough race.
Yeah, it is tough. I don't mind the 7 Rothschild 9-2 morning line here. Came off the bench last time, showed up at Gulfstream and ended up sub 4-1. Finished second to Clever Mischief. I thought raced pretty well in there. I think lacked room in the stretch. Could have very easily won that race there back on March the 1st. I do think that that this one has some back lines. I mean, if you look, I mean, they thought enough to try that Grade 1 Hollywood Derby, the Twilight Derby. I mean, it was third in the Nashville Derby. I mean, that's a $3 million race, so this horse has some back lines, some back class, has always really been highly thought of, even at 2, raced in the American Pharaoh. I mean, there's things that they've always thought this horse was a good horse. And, that 1X, I thought raced pretty well considering, the layoff, the company that he had been keeping. I think he plays well here. I think he's right back in. And he fits at this spot. He should get a decent enough trip too, like a mid-pack type, and I think I remember that day, if I recall, we were doing a show and I think Will might've said that this horse might need a race. He's tied into that Jimmy Toner barn. Yeah. And I did joke with him at the time that, any time that he sort of makes that comment that the horse runs pretty well, and he actually almost won that day. So I do think that, he's going to play well in this spot. And the 8 then I think also plays pretty well. If you look at that one's lines, the back lines in the maiden races in New York were solid. Broke the maiden over the synthetic back in December. And then I thought raced okay versus Echo Lane, who was, hot this winter, had some decent lines, but had trouble in that race. But you're right. Really for the lines and really, it's tough to take 3.5 to 1 on this horse in this race versus these horses. He's not going to play like that. So I don't mind your 9. I do think that one's interesting. As far as the horse goes, big blowout win back on March 5th at Turfway. The turf lines back at Monmouth last in 23 were okay. Faced the Ginger Wizard going 1.5 miles. Wasn't going to do anything in that spot. This horse had terrible posts. There's things to like about the 9, especially at 10 to 1 morning line. It's a wide open race. I think you could look to keep an eye on the AEs. I mean, there might be some form there that could maybe scratch in and you might want to look at there. I'd be heavy 7 though. I think that one plays pretty well, and we'll use that one to finish up on Saturday. Well, Jackson, tough sequence. I know we've been sort of trying to put tickets together here on these weekend cards. Is this one you think we'll attack, or are we going to try to run and hide from?
No, we're going to attack. It's Saturday at Keeland. We got to play something. We'll figure it out. We'll lock in, and we're going to play the turf pick 3 or pick 5, whatever we're going to do. But we're going to get involved for sure.
Well, always good to have you. Definitely wish you the best with your new show coming up with America's Best Racing. I'm sure that I'll be jumping you on for plus shows and all kind of other things. So hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
This has been a production of In the Money Media. We have a couple more Keeneland shows in the hopper. Friday's card is Nick Tammer and I did and is up on YouTube and on the audio side. So check that out. We'll do a couple more shows next week to finish up Keeneland, and then we're going to have Churchill coverage wall to wall. Check out the Monster Pods. Jackson, jumped in on one of those Monster Pods. So jump in on In the Money YouTube and check those out. We'll see y'all next time.